The night she left him at the hospital, it was raining so hard the world felt blurred at the edges. Miriam stood under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the emergency entrance, her fingers still wrapped around the strap of her purse as if she needed something solid to hold her upright. Inside, doctors were working on her husband, Khalid, who had collapsed at work from a sudden cardiac arrest. He was only 34. Too young, everyone said. She had kissed his forehead before they wheeled him away. She had whispered that she would be right there when he woke up. But when the surgeon came out 3 hours later, his eyes already carried the answer. Khalid survived the surgery, but his brain had been without oxygen too long. He would never wake up. For 2 weeks, Miriam sat beside the bed, watching machines breathe for him. She held his hand and tried to remember the sound of his laugh instead of the hollow silence in the room. At home, their 4-year-old son Yassine asked why Baba was not coming back. On the 15th day, the doctor spoke gently about long-term care, about facilities and costs and realities. Miriam felt something inside her collapse. The next morning, she signed the transfer papers. She pressed her palm against Khalid's chest one last time and whispered an apology he could not hear. Then she walked out of the hospital alone. People said she abandoned him. Some said she was heartless. Others said she was practical. None of them knew what it felt like to be 28 years old with a child, no income, and a husband who would never open his eyes again. For a while, survival swallowed everything else. Miriam moved to a smaller apartment. She took a job as a receptionist during the day and stitched clothes at night. She learned to fix leaking taps, to attend parent-teacher meetings alone, to answer Yassine's quiet questions about fathers. She told him the truth, softened around the edges. Your Baba is sick. He cannot talk or walk. But he loves you. What she did not tell him was that she could not afford to visit often. The long-term care center was across the city. The bus fare, the lost work hours, the emotional toll, all of it felt unbearable. She visited it first once a week. Then once a month. Then less. Guilt became a quiet companion. 7 years passed. Yassine grew taller, sharper, curious about everything. He had Khalid's eyes. Sometimes when he laughed, Miriam felt a twist in her chest so sharp she had to turn away. One afternoon, Yassine came home from school clutching a permission slip. There was a community service project at a rehabilitation center. The students would visit patients, read to them, help with simple activities. Can I go, Mama? He asked, excitement shining in his face. Miriam did not look at the name of the facility carefully. She signed. The following Saturday, she accompanied the children. Parents were allowed to stay in the common area. The building looked familiar, but she told herself many centers looked alike. Then she saw the sign near the entrance. Her breath left her. It was the same place. Her feet felt rooted to the floor. She had not stepped inside in almost 3 years. She had told herself it was better not to reopen wounds. She had convinced herself Khalid did not know the difference. Yassine ran ahead with his class, unaware. Miriam's heart pounded in her ears as she followed the group down the corridor. The smell of antiseptic and something faintly metallic pulled her backward in time. They entered a bright room filled with wheelchairs and beds arranged neatly by the windows. Some patients stared blankly. Others slept. Then she saw him. Khalid sat upright in a wheelchair near the far wall. His hair was thinner, streaked with gray, but his face was unmistakable. His eyes were open. Open. Miriam froze. He was looking across the room at a little boy who was animatedly describing a football match. The nurse beside him smiled gently and adjusted the blanket over his knees. Some patients respond well to children, the nurse was telling another parent. It stimulates memory. Miriam could not breathe. Yassine stepped forward to offer a handmade card to the man in the wheelchair. Khalid's gaze shifted, slowly, and rested on the child. For a long second, Then Khalid's fingers twitched. It was small, almost invisible, but Miriam saw it. She took a step forward, her vision blurring with tears. "Khalid," she whispered. The nurse looked at her in surprise. "You know him?" "I'm his wife," she said, the word catching in her throat. The nurse's expression softened. "He regained minimal consciousness about a year ago. It's inconsistent, but he responds to familiar voices sometimes. We tried contacting family, but the number on file was no longer active." Miriam felt the weight of her absence settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. Yassine turned, confused. "Mama?" She walked to them slowly, as if approaching something fragile. She knelt beside Khalid's wheelchair. "It's me," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm here." Khalid's eyes moved again, searching, unfocused at first. Then they steadied. For a fleeting moment, she saw recognition. A tear slipped from the corner of his eye. Miriam pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from sobbing. Yassine looked between them. "Is this Baba?" The question broke whatever wall she had built around herself. "Yes," she whispered. "This is your Baba." Yassine stepped closer, steadying the man's face. "Hi, Baba," he said softly. "I'm Yassine. I'm 7 now." Khalid's lips parted slightly. No sound came, but his chest rose unevenly. The nurse explained that recovery at this stage was unpredictable. He could not speak, and his movement was limited. But awareness had returned in fragments. Familiar presence helped. Miriam felt shame, relief, love, and fear crash together inside her. She had left him here believing there was nothing left. She had told herself she was protecting her son from a lifetime of watching a body without a soul. But she had been wrong. Over the following weeks, Miriam rearranged her life again. She shifted work hours, found cheaper transport, asked for help she once refused to seek. Every Saturday, they visited. Yassine would read stories aloud. Sometimes Khalid's eyes would close as if listening deeply. Sometimes his fingers would curl faintly around his son's small hand. One evening, as sunlight poured through the window, Miriam leaned close and told Khalid about the years he had missed. The first day of school. The broken tooth. The time Yassine insisted on sleeping with his father's old shirt. Khalid's gaze held hers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought you were gone." His fingers moved again, stronger this time, brushing against her wrist. 7 years ago, she had walked out of the hospital believing she was saying goodbye to a life that no longer existed. Now she understood something different.